Judaism's holy shrine, the Western or Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, has nothing to do with God or his holy church. God ordained Jerusalem's destruction by Roman general Titus in 70 AD, seemingly fulfilling Jesus Christ's prophecy of Jerusalem's imminent destruction, where not one stone would be left upon another. The temple was utterly destroyed and 1 million Jews perished in the siege. Centuries later, when the Jews attempted to rebuild the temple under Julian the Apostate, large fireballs came up from the earth and burned them to death. Glowing crosses appears on the onlookers. The temple reconstruction was completely abandoned, and they never tried again.
And Jesus said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Matthew 24:22. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. Matthew 23:27-28.
Christ said he left Jerusalem desolate, so this supposed Wailing Wall is nothing but a mockery of God and his decree to destroy Jerusalem and the Levitical system. The Western Wall is not a remnant of the original temple. The Wailing Wall as a Jewish holy place is a modern invention that was selected for Jewish worship by one of the greatest mystics of the Kabbalistic age. His name was Isaac Luria, who in his many geographical mistakes selected the Western Wall as a holy place for the Jews to assemble, a mere 430 years ago. In actual fact, the Jewish people today at their Wailing Wall are not praying at a wall of their former temples. They are actually praying toward the Western Wall of Fort Antonia. The shrine on the other side of the Wailing Wall in the time of Jesus was not the temple built by Herod, but it was a Roman temple dedicated to the Roman emperor and the gods of Rome. Quote from Ernest Martin. If there's one rite of passage that every American politician must pass through, it's doing obeisance to the Jews at the Wailing Wall. Even Rand Paul caved to the Jews, something his father would never do, and found himself sacrificing his own son to the Kotel rabbi, looking as if he was being led away to the slaughter. You see, taking the mark of the beast in order to buy Jewish admission to sell political services is every American politician's career-dependent rite of passage. Now, the Jews would have us believe that there's something sacred about the Western Wall, that it's a remnant of the Second Temple, where paper prayers of the Goyim are snatched by the divine presence, who supposedly dwells in its crevices and stones. Dead wrong. The Wailing Wall is actually the remains of a Roman fortress called Fort Antonia, built north of the actual temple, where no protruding rock ever existed, but rather was built upon the Gihon Spring. The rock upon which the dome of the rock was built adjoining the Western Wall was actually the centerpiece around which Fort Antonia was built. There's nothing sacred about this rock or this wall. This is attested to by the eyewitness Jewish historian Josephus, who also wrote in his Jewish Wars that the Romans left nothing above or below ground of the Second Temple, so that one coming to Jerusalem thereafter would never believe a temple ever existed. According to Josephus Titus, the Roman general who razed Jerusalem to the ground in 70 AD, allowed Fort Antonia to remain to house the 10th Legion left to monitor Roman affairs in Jerusalem. And thus the prophecy of Christ, not one stone will be left upon another, was fulfilled. God will not be mocked. If you still don't believe me, then get the book, The Temples That Jerusalem Forgot, by Professor Dr. Ernest Martin, and you'll surely be convinced. Now, what Rand Paul should have known is that the Wailing Wall is the seat of a satanic ritual outlined by the 13th century Jewish occult system, known as the Kabbalah, as expounded in the Zohar and expanded upon by the 18th century Hasidic movement. You see, this so-called divine presence at the Wailing Wall is actually the Kabbalistic feminine emanation of their false god, the Shekinah. Watch closely how the rabbis thrust their pelvises and penises back and forth in a prescribed prayer movement called davening, in which the Jew copulates with the Shekinah in order to give birth to an erotic union with the Ein Sof, the Kabbalistic masculine emanation of their false god. Now watch this young Jewish boy, who instinctively knowing that davening is a lewd and embarrassing act, just can't bring himself to perform the thrusting of his pelvis. My friends, for Rand Paul and for so many other saps like McCain, Bush, Obama, Clinton, and Romney, to perform the rite of political passage at the Wailing Wall is nothing less than to shake hands with the devil. And if God doesn't dwell in temples made by human hands, as the Bible tells us, much less would he dwell in a Roman fortress. The hoax is on. Not only are our politicians selling their souls to the Jews at a Roman fortress named Fort Antonia, now misnamed the Western Wall, they're participating in a lewd occult ritual where the so-called divine presence is actually Satan himself. Satan's seat is at the Wailing Wall, and our politicians, brought there by the Jews, are carrying him all the way back home to America. I am sure I've missed many others, but this should give you some idea how many world leaders pay homage to this wall. They disregard Jesus, who said he was the new temple that would be raised up in 3 days. Anyone who hopes for and builds any other temple worships the image of the beast. On Ernest Martin's webpage on the internet, where he has an abundance of historical information from early and even modern Jewish scholars, he shows that the Jewish people paid no attention whatsoever to the present Western Wailing Wall until they finally took over the site from the Muslims around 1570 CE, who in turn had renovated it from being a Christian holy place where Christian women would discard soiled undergarments. The Wailing Wall as a Jewish holy place is a modern invention that was selected for Jewish worship by one of the greatest mystics of the Kabbalistic age. His name was Isaac Luria, called the Lion, who in his many geographical mistakes, as he shows in my research writings, selected the Western Wall as a holy place for the Jews to assemble. This was accomplished in the last part of the 16th century, a mere 430 years ago. In actual fact, the Jewish people today at their Wailing Wall are not praying at a wall of their former temples. They are actually praying toward the western wall of Fort Antonia. The shrine on the other side of the Wailing Wall in the time of Jesus was not the temple built by Herod, but it was a Roman temple dedicated to the Roman emperor and the gods of Rome. What happened to the stones of the temple? All of the temple and its walls were torn down to their foundations, just as Jesus prophesied they would be. Consequently, let us not get the two different buildings, Fort Antonia and the temple, mixed up as all scholars and religious leaders have done since the time of the Crusades. It is time to get back to this truth of the Bible. All should read the book, The Temples That Jerusalem Forgot, where the historical evidence shows, without doubt, that the real place of the former Jewish temples was over the Gihon Spring on the southeast ridge.